Good evening, everyone. Welcome along to our council meeting of the 11th of May 2016. I'm Councillor Samantha Ratnam, the Mayor of Moreland City Council, and will be your chair this evening. In recognising the cultural diversity of our great city, I pay my respects to the local Indigenous people of Moreland by acknowledging that we meet on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. I offer my respects to Wurundjeri elders past, present and future, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Members of the gallery, please note this council meeting is being recorded and web streamed live to council's website. This recording will also be available as video on demand. Gallery attendees are advised they may be recorded during the meeting. Councillors, just as a reminder that in line with the adopted Councillor Code of Conduct principles as outlined in the Code of Conduct, councillors should ensure that they conduct themselves in the meeting with integrity, impartially exercise their responsibilities in the interest of the local community, and not improperly seek to confer or advantage any person. This behaviour will support the principles for leadership and good governance that secures public confidence in the office of councillor. I'd like to do some introductions now and introduce the councillors and officers in attendance with us tonight. Councillors in attendance with us are, I'll just go from around the table, Councillor Sue Bolton, Councillor Helen Davidson, Councillor Megan Hopper, Councillor John Kavanagh, Councillor Lita Gillies, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Lambros Tapanos, Councillor Lenka Thompson, Councillor Rob Thompson and Councillor Oscar Yildiz. The officers in attendance tonight are Chief Executive Officer Norina De Lorenzo, Director of Corporate Services, James Scott, Director of City Infrastructure, Grant Thorne, Director of Planning and Economic Development, Kirsten Coster, Director of Social Development, Arden Joseph, Executive Manager, Organisation Development, Anita Craven, Manager of Governance, Lydia Harding, and I don't think we're just moving on now to apologies. Could I please have a motion, could I inquire if there have been any apologies from councillors this evening?
Councillor Teddy is going to be 10 minutes late.
Okay, so it's not an apology, it's just for noting. Okay, we'll proceed then. I'd like to ask now for disclosures of interest and or conflict of interest. I'd like to declare that I'll just declare a conflict at one of the notices of motion as we get regarding a rally. I'll declare that conflict at that item. Councillors, we have in somewhat an extraordinary agenda tonight, given that we have a planning permit application before us as well. So I'm going to ask councillors if they are happy to proceed to the planning permit application first before we proceed into the ordinary business of the meeting. Councillors, happy if I move that item forward?
We have a petition on that very matter. We'd like to lodge it first.
We might.
Submission.
You can make it as part of the submission. We can.
Maybe 2 by 10. I've got my own submission.
Okay, we'll deal with it. We're going to suspend standing at all, so we'll be able to do that. Okay, so yes. Pardon, 1 second. Sorry, it's not an open topic. I'm just going to take the councillors first. Councillor Gillies.
Mayor Ratnam, I do believe that Councillor Teddy would like to be here for that vote, and he is running 10 minutes late. So if we could go through the normal procedure and go straight from petitions to that, maybe that would help the case.
I appreciate that, Councillor Gillies, but the meeting starts at 7 p.m. and all councillors are aware of that, and it's incumbent on them to attend the meeting on time. So I don't think we should make allowances for councillors running late. Councillor Bolton? Councillors, can I please ask one person speak?
141 of the agenda.
Councillor Bolton.
So let's follow the agenda.
Councillor
If we
Gillies.
do the petition, the question time, then we could go straight to that item.
Well said.
Mainly because a lot of residents would, are used to the normal process where questions are at the beginning.
So I understand that. I'm asking, I understand that. Members of the gallery, can I please ask you not to interject? We're in formal council meeting. Members of the gallery, can I please remind you, this is not the time for questions and interruptions. Can I please ask you to desist?
Yes, you may ask.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to get a straw poll from councillors because I'd like to know what, because I could make the ruling to bring that item forward in terms of changing the agenda, but I would like to know that there's councillor support for it. I know I've heard a different range of opinions. Could I have a sense of which councillors would like to bring that forward as a first point of business? Those who don't want to? Okay, it's pretty much tied. So I think we'll proceed with bringing it forward. There were more in favour of it. Okay, so we will. I would like now. So we're going to DED 3516, the planning application. So amendment to the planning application permit, 184 to 186 Glenroy Road, Glenroy, and 10 to 12 Blenheim Street, Glenroy. going to ask first, could I please have a motion to suspend standing orders in order to hear submissions for council report, submissions for council report DD 3516, as I've read out. So, Councillor Thompson, is there a seconder? Councillor Kavanagh? All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Members of the gallery, we've suspended standing orders to be able to hear submissions to this planning application, given that it's normally heard during the Urban Planning Committee, and there's a procedure around hearing submissions that is not ordinarily applied at this type of formal council meeting. So this will be the opportunity for the applicant and objectors to speak to their support or objection to the planning application. We will then resume standing orders to actually vote on the recommendation. I'll just outline how this item will run this evening. I'll give any objectors the opportunity to move to the lectern and make their submission. After this time, the applicant will be given the opportunity to speak. If you're making a submission, please clearly state your name and address for the record. If you are requested to present viewpoints clearly and concisely on why you support or oppose the planning application. Please note that there is a time limit of 3 minutes for each speaker, but as chairperson, I reserve the right to increase or reduce the time available to any speaker. Could I please ask if there is an objector who wishes to speak to the planning application?
That's the normal procedure. We have a petition.
Would you like to present a...
Why are you reaching out?
Do I hear a request to present a petition?
Yes. So.
Okay, so a petition has been presented. Do you wish to speak to the petition?
Yes, I will speak briefly.
Please come to the lectern.
Thank you, councillors. I will endeavour to be brief, as most of this matter which should be said and must be said will be said, no doubt, in the course of this hearing. But what should be said is about the second part of the petition. The Councillor Ratnam recused herself from this proceeding. In the matter of Lewis v Ogden, High Court of Australia 1984, there Justice Ogden stopped being a judge and presumed to instruct the jury in how to interpret the evidence. As Mr Lewis well said, it was like an umpire in a Collingwood AFL match putting on a Collingwood Guernsey at half-time. Here we have the opposite. Samantha Ratnam has been wearing a Merri Community Health jersey and making objections without the decency to put them in writing. Now she presumes to put on the white umpire's coat at half-time and sit in judgment. This is plain wrong. She must recuse herself from this matter and leave the chamber. Furthermore, she should follow the example of the Mayor of Manningham, who resigned today, from whom it was said, the honourable thing to do is to step aside from the position of Mayor, no matter what political party a council is from. If you get elected by the people to serve for a 4-year term at Manningham Council, then that should be your first and only priority. Now, Stephen Mayne is going to be resigning from Manningham to run for office, and the Labor Mayor has resigned from Manningham to run for office. You know it's the right thing to do. I also note the article in today's Sun Herald where she has been violating her own party's position on fundraising through selling booze. I have the call, selling booze for which she has neither applied to the Liquor Licensing Commission or a council for a permit. Is there no depth she will not sink to? Moral people,
I will ask you to sit down.
And it is an honour and a privilege to know them. Frankly, I am a...
I'll ask you to sit down now. You're not going to speak to the application.
One thing on the second part of the petition. I use the words of Oliver Cromwell.
All right. I'm going to resume the meeting now. I'm just going to remind members of the gallery that they must conduct themselves with respect for the chamber and for councillors and not seek to disrupt the meeting. If you do not comply with the directions of the chairperson, I will ask you to leave. I will provide a warning, and I feel like I have provided a warning. So, Ms. Jacob, can I please remind you that to please conduct yourself in an orderly manner, or I will ask you to leave the meeting. We will resume submissions to the planning permit application. Is there an objector to the planning permit application who wishes to speak?
Good evening, councillors. Mark Higginbotham, 5/264 Hope Street in West Brunswick. I rise to give an objection to this particular application. As you well know, as Mayor and Councillor, I fought hard and long against the concept of gaming machines within the City of Moreland. And I certainly still...
Can I ask a question, Mayor?
Certainly.
Is Mr Higginbotham a formal objector to the application?
Are you a formal objector
No,
to the
I'm not.
application? Okay, all right. I should take formal objectors to the application first. I'm sorry, Mr. Higginbotham.
Can I ask a question if that relates to that, because it's important? I was going to ask a question in relation to this matter.
Yes.
Because this has been brought on in this particular way, I can't ask a question
Certainly.
pertaining to it.
Okay, note that. Okay.
I'm happy for the other objections to speak, and then I will lodge my
Yes, I'm
objection
happy-
if that's
I'm happy
satisfactory.
to take that, and I note the question that has come through question time. We have suspended standing order, so there is
I
a slight
understand
variation
that.
to this process tonight.
I understand that.
Thank you for your understanding, and we will
Thank
hear
you.
you following the formal objectors. Are there any formal objectors to the application who wish to speak? Might come first, actually. He might not be here. Could I just ask as clarification to officers, were all formal objectors invited to this meeting? They were. Okay, thank you very much. Well, we might ask objectors who weren't formal objectors. Mr. Higginbotham?
Ask how many there were.
Yeah, it's in the report, councillors. We might go through that. Mr. Higginbotham, sorry. Please resume.
Thank you, and thank you for your indulgence. I go back to what I was saying before, and I'm aware that recently Councillor Kavanagh talked about the question of a special rate in relation to gaming machines. As I've said, my history in relation to gaming in Moreland is well known. I am dead against all poker machines. I've always have been, and I've done everything I can to prevent them when I was in office and as a councillor. My feelings on this matter have not changed. I've looked at the report tonight, and I note the matter's come to council with an approval of the application, except for the question of the 10 extra gaming machines. And certainly I'm in support of that particular amendment. There's no question I will not and would do everything I can to prevent the question of further machines anywhere in the city, but particularly in the area of Glenroy. I'm also aware that it's below the cap in the municipal policy and those matters. It doesn't matter. I'm aware of what happens up in Glenroy about the relation of gaming and these issues. I work in the area on a regular basis. Can I ask my question in relation to this?
Please ask your question, yes.
Yes. My question related, and I'm not sure about this, but I've been led to believe that in the first part of this process, the council officers actually approved these 10 extra machines in relation to this application before it went to the Gaming Commission. Is that true or not?
I'll get an officer to respond to that. So my understanding is it's not what happened was he went to the BLCGR and there's a negotiation process, but it's not a council approval process at that stage, but I'll get the Director of Social Development to answer that. Did council approve the 10 extra machines when it went to the BCGR?
Through you, my recollection, my understanding is that council officers did not approve 10 extra machines.
Just to see clarification, it's not within our power to approve or disapprove. It's the VCGLR who approves or disapproves. Council did lodge an objection,
yes,
as often happens through these processes. It did withdraw its objection based on a community benefit negotiation, but that happens quite often in these types of applications and based on advice that we get at the time about the likelihood of success of our objection.
I understand that,
yes.
But could it in fact be inferred by that removal of that objection that by default the council is actually agreeing to the 10 extra machines?
Okay, that's a good question to ask. Councillor Kavanagh, did you want to say something?
I know the director's planning and economic development.
Okay, yes, please, Ms Costa.
Through the Mayor, just to help clarify in relation to this, we're talking about two quite different processes and two different acts, and the officers handling both of them are quite separate. So Social Development has handled the Campbelling Act process. Through that process, council was asked if, in the event that a permit was issued, what conditions would it seek? So it's not the decision maker, so it can't be inferred council made a decision. But if the Gambling Commission was of a view to, what conditions would council accept? That's my understanding of the process from the hearing. So now that's a separate decision, and now council needs to consider a different act and make a decision in relation to the Planning and Environment Act.
Fine. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you very much.
I just make the point, I understand the great work that the Glenroy RSL does and its membership and its community work, but I'm also mindful of the damage that gaming machines do, and I'm also mindful that back in 2001, approval was given under delegation, not by council, to the 40 gaming machines which are currently there. It would be remiss of this council, totally against policy, to approve the extension of any further gaming machines in Glenroy or anywhere else in this city. I urge you to accept the application with the amendment not to approve the 10 extra machines. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr Hickenlockie. Thank you. Are there any further objectors who wish to speak? No? Are there supporters or the applicant at this stage who wish to speak? Please come forward, Ms Jacob, and I please remind you of the warning I just provided.
John Adams once said, "Facts are stubborn things. Whatever may be our wishes, our inclinations, or the dictates of our passions, they cannot alter the state of facts or evidence." Tonight is not a referendum on gambling, but a quasi-judicial decision on a planning permit. And with all due respect to the officers, you were wrong. You went to, using your delegated authority, and it's in the material already provided, you went to the Liquor Gaming Commission objecting to our application. You withdrew that objection in return for 2 conditions being placed on the permit. One was a legitimate gambling limitation of 20 grand a year, community support. The other was a planning permit and big condition, which was that the renovations be done in 2 years. And by doing that, you are stopped by conduct, as per Verwain, as per Winky Pop. The decisions of the High Court are binding on all of us. It's not a smorgasbord where you can pick and choose, as some here tonight seem to think. That's the fact. What is a fiction? That the decisions of the High Court and council officers acting by way of lawful delegated authority are only minor technicalities. When the High Court in South Africa ruled against apartheid in 1950 and 1951, their government, like the Mayor, claimed it was a minor technicality and made themselves their own High Court, just as the Mayor has done tonight. Thus, the evil of apartheid was born. Fact, this council operates on the principle of fairness to all. To change the rules after the licences have been granted with conditions, specifically attached at the request of council, and significant monies, to wit 188 grand, have been expended by the Glenroy RSL, is simply not fair. Even a 6-year-old understands this. Now, most of you will be standing for your election this year. How would you feel if, after nominations are closed, you'd purchased your posters and how to vote cards, the returning officer by regulation said, well, you're not eligible to run? You'd be doing just as we are, saying it's unfair, saying you was stopped by conduct, and quoting Verwain and Lamb. Fact, the Glenroy RSL, like most gaming venues, pours monies back into the community, be it the Glenroy Special School, youth centres, direct support to veterans in distress, their partners and children and the community in general. You all go along to the Anzac Day ceremonies. Fair enough. Wave the flag, make the speeches, lay the wreaths, have the gunfire breakfast and go. That's it for you for the next 364 days of the year. Every day our club lives with the horror of war and those maimed by it. That service person sitting alone in desperation with no food, no money for food, we use the money we raise in order to put food on the table. And I just want to talk a little bit further about that.
Mr Jacob, just remind you your time has now lapsed, so please wind up.
I would like to finish what I'm saying. I've been quite reasonable.
Please start summarising your argument.
Well, the point I'm about to make, and I want to make this point
I'll give you one
because it is
minute.
on point. As you all know, in November 2011, I had a stroke. I was in hospital for a week and I came out. 2 days later, I got a letter from the DVA telling me to go take a hike on my claim. I was in despair. I had no food. I couldn't even afford to buy my parents' Christmas presents. And of course, I could not work. You can imagine the tears running down my eyes and the pain behind them. It was the RSL that came to the rescue. They gave me a gift card so I could have food on my table and buy some presents for my parents. Gift cards do not grow on trees. We get them by the money we raise. We are not asking you to subsidise our club, as many have in the recent budget session. We're not even asking you to fight our fight. All we are asking for are the tools to finish the job. Tools that, through your delegated officers, you promised, and a promise that we acted upon in good faith to the tune of 180 grand. The final thing I would say, I have seen the objections that have been floating around, and you've had my detailed submission on the Merri Community Health pro forma objections. As some of you know, I'm related to Miles Franklin.
Ms Jacob, your time has now lapsed.
Therefore, I can
Please ask you
safely
to
say this, that
sit
Councillor
down.
Ratnam, Merri Community Health and the Council Officers' report should all be nominated for the Miles Franklin Award, being great works of Australian fiction.
Thank you, Ms Jacob. Is there a speaker for the applicant with us tonight who wishes to speak? Yes, please come forward.
Thanks, councillors. My name's Nick Anderson. I'm the Managing Director of the NBA Group, the planning consultancy that prepared the application, the town planning application, and the socio-economic impact assessment, as well as presented at the Gaming Commission. So hopefully tonight I can shed some light on some of the issues that have been raised and put some facts around some of the grey areas. Just for the benefit of the council, we lodged the planning application, which one of the directors rightly pointed out is lodged under the Planning and Environment Act, and that was for the buildings and works, as well as for the installation of the 10 additional gaming machines. That was prepared on the 15th of June. I coordinated the design of the building, as well as the planning report and this socio-economic impact assessment, which formed part of the planning application under that Act, but also was lodged with the Social Planning Department of Council and went through the Gaming Commission proposal. So they two quite extensive pieces of work that I know intimately. The council, I liaised throughout the process with, on the statutory side of things, with Megan Merritt in Council's Planning Department, and I would like to put on the record that she was fantastic and made herself available, and we met a number of times over the preparation of the plans, and so, you know, a credit to her with the way she was conducted herself and represented council. On the social planning side of it, this is the copy of the submission that council put into the Gaming Commission. A day or two prior to the hearing, council basically had an independent analysis done of my report versus council's submission, and John Rantino, on behalf of council from Maddox, put this letter in to the Gaming Commission on the 7th of September, where it clearly says discussions have taken place between Glenroy RSL and council. As a result, council hereby withdraws its objection on the basis that it has agreed with the Glenroy RSL that the following two conditions be opposed if approved. And it outlines the community contributions of $20,000 and that the proposed buildings and works under the statutory application must be completed within 2 years. At that point, back on the 7th of September, it does clearly say we act for and represent the Moreland City Council. We took it to be that all of the negotiations pre-lodgement and post-lodgement and prior to the gaming hearing had been very constructive with the council. We then went to the Gaming Commission. We had a hearing whereby it was considered and the decision was handed down in favour of the application based on the Gaming Commission's assessment of all of the socio-economic issues and the gaming issues. And what, interestingly, even though this was withdrawn, it had already been provided to the Commission, so the Commission was obligated to consider it as well. So it wasn't wasted money by council, it just didn't end up carrying any weight in their ultimate decision. So I'm here tonight, hopefully to...
Excuse me, sir. Sorry, just a reminder that your time has lapsed, so please start winding up. Yep.
Okay. I might actually request, given my role in it, and I might actually request if I can have some more time rather than winding up, because I've probably only got 5 minutes all up, but I have got some pretty pertinent points to make, I think, in the context of tonight's
I'm happy to go on a
discussion.
couple more minutes, given, yes, you're speaking to the applicant.
Okay. I feel that all relevant. So the other thing that happened after Christmas was Council implemented its new gaming policy. So all of these discussions were happening under Council's previous gaming policy. The new policy came in. I came and had a meeting with Megan. We went through the pros and cons of the application based on the new policy, and I feel and maintain that where possible, this application fully complies with the new policy. There's some prohibitive components of the new policy which would render it impossible to comply with, but the fact that this is an existing venue, it's a club and it's an RSL, it complies overwhelmingly with the parts of the policy that are possible to comply with. We note that the 53 objections, 51 of them are a petition, and one was based on an issue with native vegetation and a tree. That's been addressed in our amended plans. So really, there was one standalone objection and 53 objections by way of petition. The grounds of the objections are basically all anti-gaming, and people are entitled to their opinion on gaming, and this is not really an application to discuss the merits of gaming. It is what needs to be complied with under the Gaming Act and the Planning and Environment Act, and I find that this application complies where it's possible to comply. The main prohibitive and item in your planning policy that makes it impossible for any existing gaming venue to comply with it for any top-ups, and one of the objectors spoke well about, making sure that there's never any gaming machines in Moreland, and that is the 800 metre rule. If you've got a prohibition rule where you don't want any more gaming machines within 800 metres of a sensitive use, that basically bans gaming in the rest of the municipality. The Gaming Commission, VCAT and others will look at that on its face value, and it will see it, in my opinion, as a prohibition clause. Our venue is a destination venue. It's got a 2.5 kilometre catchment. It serves much more than just the Glenroy community, and from that point of view, we think that's why it's does comply with your policy and was supported by the Gaming Commission. The other key point
is... Sorry, can I please ask you to stop?
Yep. The other key point is it's an existing venue. It's on the periphery. It's not within the CBD as in the officer's report. The officer's report says it's proximate to the CBD. It's not within the CBD. And it's well separated by definition because it's in a completely separate zone to the CBD, and it has a buffer of a light industrial zone between the commercial area and the subject site. So, in closing, look, I could talk for a long time, but my closing comment on it, and I do thank you for the opportunity to speak, is that it's very risky in the report to start to second guess the decisions that have been made on this up until this point in time, and that the council's commitment that it made to the RSL and to the Gaming Commission prior to the hearing, and I basically see it as a backflip on the advice and the commitment and the negotiations that were very forthright and transparent right up until this point. So I encourage council to approve it, including the machines.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to ask if any councillors have questions of the applicant before we resume standing orders. Councillor Thompson.
Nick? Sorry.
Yes.
My query is in relation to the figures or the facts and figures that you've given that are given in the report, in particularly the revenue that's going to come from the extra 10 machines.
Yes.
It indicates $53,000.
Yeah.
And yet, in doing that, there is then a $20,000 per annum donation.
Yes.
So the net effect is $33,000. Is that
correct?
It seems like a very small amount per annum as far as income is concerned for 10 extra machines. Yeah. I understand the redevelopment of the facility and the extra patronage as far as meals and so forth could also benefit from it, but it just sort of seems to be a lot for a little.
No, I appreciate your comment. Am I back on the clock again?
No,
right.
You can provide a response, but yes, please keep it concise if you could.
Okay, I could talk forever on it. The issue with the 10 additional machines, it's about net machine revenue and the taxation level spread across. So at the moment, a 40 machine venue, and with a net machine revenue of say 300 machines, $300 per machine per day, you pay tax based on your NMR across your venue. Mm-hmm. Putting it up to 10, your net machine revenue, even if gaming expenditure doesn't increase $1, your net machine revenue drops from say $300 per machine per day to $280 per machine per day. Mm-hmm. So you can actually, as a business, you can save taxation without making any additional gaming revenue. So what most gaming venues are doing, the rules only came in halfway through last year. So what a lot of venues, particularly RSLs and smaller clubs, are doing is trying to get additional machines in to get a taxation advantage, and then distributing a larger percentage of whatever the additional gaming revenue is back in community contribution. So the rule of thumb at the Gaming Commission is $1,000 per additional machine for a club. For a pub, it is generally at least $2,000 per additional machine, because pub machines generate more than club machines. RSL clubs generate less than a normal club, but the decision was made in the negotiation with council to make it $2,000 a machine on the basis of that was comparable with what, say, a hotel would be offering, and to give council the opportunity to determine where that money goes.
Can I ask one more follow-up
Yes, certainly,
question?
Councillor Thompson.
Can you give me an indication as to what sort of utilisation the existing footy machines are currently getting? Are they at 80% capacity, 70% capacity?
It fluctuates. It's in the SEIS report, and it's about... the Gaming Commission accepts a peak hour as being 70% utilisation or more of the total number of machines. This venue has about between 12 and 15 peak periods per week. Yeah. So it's not really high utilisation. It's not a supply and demand argument. It's not we need more machines because people are queuing up out the door because they can't get one. It's we need more machines as a part of the overall business model and the taxation system.
Tax minimisation is the idea behind the extra 10 machines.
Wow.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions of the applicant? I'd just like to acknowledge that Councillor Teddy is with us now. Any further questions of the applicant? Thank you very much. You may be seated.
Okay, thanks.
I'd like now to ask for a motion to resume standing orders. Sorry, you would like to speak?
To the President in hospital.
So please come to the lectern, sir. Please come to the lectern.
Unfortunately, he couldn't be here. He's in hospital. He's had a suspected heart attack. But
I'm sorry to hear
something
that.
or other. And one of our other Vietnam veterans, he's in hospital too. They're very similar situation. We've got two guys who were here last time, and they're not here tonight.
I'm sorry to hear that.
But anyhow, we try on the next best, I'm sorry to say.
No.
Anyhow, the spirit of Anzac is that no one gets left behind or forgotten. Just because we no longer wear a uniform does not mean our service to the community is over. The RSL was founded in 1916 during the World War I from soldiers that fought in Gallipoli, and due to their war wounds have been able to continue any further. And that's where we started off, and that's where ANZAC started, the Australian New Zealand Army Corps. The mateship was duly needed, was carried on for the last 100 years in the ANZAC tradition in the form of welfare to veterans, war widows and dependents, so their basic needs are satisfied. I guess you all know this, but I'd like to reiterate. In the past years and currently we have donated many thousands of dollars to many community groups, including scout groups, which are some here tonight, I believe, doing the service. Junior football clubs, not the seniors, the juniors. And every time we did the seniors, we never found out where the money was going. But I said, tell us what you're going to do with it and buy the thing and we'll pay the bill. We've had problems like that. Special needs kids, school scholarships and many more, which total this year $34,000. That's a lot of money. I don't see the hotels doing that sort of thing. So we can continue our community grants, our subsidised price meals, welfare to our veterans and war widows has become vital that we increase our poker machines. I don't like poker machines, I won't play them, but it's very necessary. People have an interest in entertainment and they're paying for it. But I don't see anybody going sort of helpless or homeless. As we appear at a deficit in our accounts our last financial year, very much so. Some items we need to note. General operating hours of general RSL are not excessive compared with other venues. But I'd like to mention a couple of things mentioned in the Victorian Commission for Gambling. I've got to read this. Commission also finds an increased number of EGMs will enable the applicant to renovate and enhance facilities at the premises, whilst enabling it to maintain and expand its level of community contributions. And like the finish, the application was approved, as you all know, even though the council wasn't there, but the EGM density in Moreland would rise by 0.1%. That detail was done by the Commission to 5.3 EGMs per 1,000 adults. Thank you for listening to me. I think you've got a little, you probably knew all this, but I had to reiterate it. Sorry about that.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming to make that submission. Okay, there's no further speakers. I'm going to ask for a motion to resume standing orders. Yep.
I had a question which we can do outside
Okay,
standing orders.
I'd like a motion to resume standing orders. Do I have a mover? Councillor Kavanagh, is there a seconder? Councillor Davidson, all those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Do I have a motion on the table? Councillor Kavanagh. I'd like a motion first before we ask questions of it. Yes?
I'd like to move the officer recommendation on page 141, 142, 143 and 144. And if I have a seconder, I have a seconder at all.
Yes, I'm happy to second that. I'm happy to second that.
And I withdraw my right to speak to close the debate.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I'd like to put an amendment to...
Certainly. So we'll just ask first whether the mover and seconder wish to speak to start it off. No?
I won't at this point.
Okay, so as a seconder, I might speak to the recommendation. So the recommendation that's been put forward is to approve the building and planning works, but not approve the extra gaming machines that have been asked for in this application. So at this stage, the Glenroy RSL has 40 machines and is asking for an increase to 50 machines. I think it's really important to understand the context in which we're making this decision. Currently, Moreland City Council, within the Moreland City Council area, $63.5 million is lost in pokies alone each year. We know that 40% of these losses come from people who are considered problem gamblers or have councillors. We know that this council has been very strong in its advocacy in terms of reform and advocacy in terms of reducing the number of game machines in its municipality and reducing the harms of gambling. That's essentially what this council has been trying to do for many years. It introduced some things that showed great leadership, like differential rates, one of the only councils to apply differential rates on pokies venues to disincentivise pokies venues coming to our area because we knew of the harms that they caused us. In following that advocacy, we have strengthened that with Planning Scheme Amendment C157, which is a very strong policy that discourages gaming machines in the following locations: the core areas of activity centres where people congregate for their daily convenience, suburbs where there's no alternative to non-gambling entertainment opportunities, or sites that are within 800 metres of sensitive uses such as community health services, welfare agencies, public community, social housing. We know from the facts that at the Glenroy RSL, we know that the Glenroy RSL is the third highest losing RSL, or there's third highest losses from pokie machines in all of Victoria. And it's rated by the CIFA index, which is measures socioeconomic disadvantage, as one of the areas of higher disadvantage, particularly in our municipality and across the state. So if you think about the objectives that we've been trying to achieve over many years, is to reduce the harms from gambling. And we've got an application for extra gaming machines in an area where we already believe that there are high areas of disadvantage and will exploit that vulnerability anymore. I don't think, as a responsible council that has been trying to reduce the harms of gambling, that we can approve the extra gaming machines. And that is why I'm supporting the recommendation to not approve the extra 10 machines. Could I have a councillor who wishes to speak against the recommendation or the motion?
Can I ask a question?
So I think, do you want to go first, Councillor Gillies? Councillor Gillies wanted to speak. Okay, Councillor Tapanos.
I just wanted to clarify, because we've heard some stuff from the gallery, from officers, whether a permit from council or any other authority was actually issued, and secondly, whether the gaming policy is actually embedded in the Moreland planning scheme, legally embedded, and if so, is that a mechanism to judge this application by?
Director of Social Development or? Yep, Director of Planning and Economic Development will answer that question.
Through the Mayor, I can clarify in relation to the planning side of the municipal strategic statement and the local policy for gaming. That was incorporated into the planning scheme. The Minister has gazetted that and considered that policy, so it is now needs to be considered in that context. In terms of the permits issued, I'm not entirely sure what the Commission has issued, but it is entirely separate to the Planning and Environment Act. It would be a bit like someone getting a heritage permit in Pentridge and building it without getting the planning permit. So you need to consider them very separately.
Okay,
So just to
the
clarify
planning permit.
Yeah, yeah.
So it hasn't been issued before.
A planning permit? No. Well, a permit exists. This is now amending
Amendment
that
to the permit.
So that's what council needs to consider, and in the context of the new MSS.
Thank you. Councillor Gillies, we should speak to against the motion.
And I am going to still put amendment if this motion, I want to put amendment to it. But what I am going to say is I have concerns about gambling in the community, there's no doubt about it. The reality is that when we're talking about poker machines in our community, the Glenroy RSL is the only RSL in Glenroy. It's the only bar in Glenroy. It's the only venue to go and have a meal after about 6 o'clock in Glenroy. You know, they subsidise meals so people can go there and actually have a cheap meal and a night out. They have a community bus that means that people get home safely. Now, what you do when these people are applying for this, for a tax exemptions, and out of that, of course, the community benefits. And we've heard of the things that you do for the community, and that is great. But the other point that I want to make is this, that if this doesn't go ahead, you know, people will go to the Pascoe Vale Hotel, which is a highly commercial business. There's no community bus to get home from. There's no subsidised meals. People will lose money and they will be walking home, maybe putting themselves in danger, and you know, and no one's looking over their shoulder or looking out for them. Same if they go to the Cross Keys, same if they go to Brunswick. And look, Brunswick and Coburg do have a lot of poker machines, but when you're talking about our ward, that's not entirely true. So, and especially our area is a dry area in terms of being able to go out to a place where there is, you know, that you can meet up with friends and do what you need to do. My other issue about this recommendation, and look, I was always brought up to believe that you couldn't apply anything retrospectively in terms of changes. In all of our planning, you know, changes, we have applied a date, you know, a cut-off date, and or said that, you know, changes could not be applied before that date. You know, if you allow a process to start, even if they're under two separate acts, or, you know, you're applying to two different departments, really, the reality is that why would you allow a community organisation like the RSL go out, spend $188K to go and get a licence at the Gaming Commission, and then and remove your objections so they think everything is fine, and then turn around and say, oh yeah, sorry, no, we put in place this policy and now you can't get them. To me, that is highly, you know, it's offensive, it's devious, and it's really, I don't think council's intent was to do that. I would hope it wasn't. But I think that if a policy is put in place after a big decision that went to full council about removing the objections in the first place, allowing a community agency to believe that, that it was okay to happen, then it is not okay to judge this application based on a policy that came in after the fact. Sorry, I did say that in a very roundabout way, but I'm just trying to say retrospectively it should not be applied.
Councillor Gillies, your time has now lapsed. If you could please wind up.
Okay, I'm winding up. Anyway, the point for me is that I do know also that Glenroy RSL do tap people on the shoulders if they think that they've got an issue, and I don't know any other venue that really does that. So, and you know, I'm there quite frequently, obviously, because of my ward meetings. But I just think you do a great job, and I'm sorry that council decisions have put you in this position.
Councillor Gillies, just to clarify, a statement you just made didn't come to full council to withdraw the objection. That did not happen. Okay, it wasn't a full council decision to withdraw the objection. It was not made at a formal council meeting.
Oh, okay.
Are there any speakers for the motion? I'll take a speaker against it.
There's no amendment to that.
Are you proposing an amendment?
I am proposing.
Would you like to propose the amendment?
That I'm fine with everything as stands, bar that I would like the removal of A and to be inserted, that installation of 10 poker machines be included in the granting of this permit.
Okay. Is there a seconder to the amendment? Councillor Yildiz. Okay. Councillor Gillis, do you wish to add anything further in speaking to the amendment?
Oh, look, I think I've said enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Gillis, do you want to add anything in seconding the amendment?
Yes, please. Can I just say, I don't think the issue is actually the 10 extra machines. If someone's a compulsive gambler, they're going to find machines wherever they are. You've got the Pascoe Vale pub, you've got the First and Last, you've got Drums, you've got Browns. The issue is not the machines, the issue is the gambler. We need to find ways to help the gambler. If we do this today, then we need to do this to every other venue that ever comes into this council to ensure that we're consistent. I've had a beer at your RSL, Bert, and I've enjoyed it. I've come to almost every RSL commemoration event that's held at the RSL. I've been to the traders' meetings, which you've allowed them to use for free, and you're donating $20,000 to groups that are in desperate need, and you do this year after year after year. So if we ban or restrict the number, then we must ensure that this is precedent and it happens all the time. My points here are that the RSL, whether we like it or not, councillors, is a business. And if you guys continue doing what you have been doing and you're doing it well and you need these machines to be able to operate the business, then I believe that we should vote in favour of an extra 10 machines. And I think it takes a bit of courage and a bit of guts for a council to stand up and go, I want to move an amendment to include an extra 10, because I know the general public will say, why are you guys, we're not supporting gambling. But when you look at the big picture, the advantages do outweigh the disadvantages, meaning that you are providing a service. Out of the $53,000 that you're going to earn, you're going to give $20,000 of that back. And my question to you is this, will that happen every year? And I still go back to my initial point. Someone who's a gambler will go to Crown. Someone who's a gambler that night, they've got that money in their pocket, they're going to spend it. They don't spend it at your RSL, they're going to go and spend it at Pascoe Vale RSL. I walk past the Pascoe Vale RSL every single night, almost, and I see the amount of gambling. So I certainly am not condoning it. I think I'm not a gambler, and those that have lost their lives, they've lost their houses, they've lost their families. So I'm not sitting here saying it's a great thing, but when you look at the big picture, those machines are going to fund a very big operation. And I think if you are to grow, these machines are going to fund it. So there are going to be people in the audience saying, what is he doing? But I think sometimes that's why we're here. We've got to be able to outweigh those pros and cons and make a decision that's in the best interest of the business and also in the best interest of the community. So I commend Councillor Gillis for having the guts. Well,
Thank you, Councillor Gillis. And I'll just remind councillors you can speak once to an amendment, so just use your speaking rights wisely. Councillor Tapanos, you wish to speak for the amendment, against the amendment?
I'm speaking against the amendment. It's always difficult making planning decisions, it really is. But we need to do so when we sit around this table assessing a planning application, we do so in accordance with the planning laws, particularly the Moreland planning scheme. And occasionally as councillors, we change that where we don't see it's fit. We change it as our community changes and our needs are changing and our city develops. We make amendments. We've recently made this amendment to include our gaming strategy because we recognise that problem gambling exists in our city. And we recognise that a lot of people fall victims to these machines. And I disagree. It's not about the person, it is the machine. The machine is deceptive. The machine is a dangerous product. We don't want to put dangerous products near our people. Our community is addicted. Many people in our community are addicted because the machines are designed to make our community addicted to them. That is my view. That's why I support the policy, and I don't think it should be altered, and I don't think at its first test in a planning application it should be ignored or watered down. I say that with all due respect to the RSL. I've been to the RSL, I've had a beer, you know what, I might have even had a bet on one of the machines for $20 or $5. I appreciate the work you do, but it's not about that. It is about making a decision in accordance with the planning scheme. And the planning scheme says that we don't want to see in the area of Glenroy more machines, and I will be honouring that. Now that I've said that, I might actually say a little bit more about gambling in our community. And once more, my views don't necessarily matter. What matters is what is in the planning law. But gambling is a problem. I think we lose, just to electronic gaming machines, more money than what we collect in rates, or just about, over the time. Now, we run so many services with that money. And that is the type of amount of money that gets lost in our community by people gambling. And it's not just limited to electronic gaming machines. It is online sporting gaming. It is the casino. But you know what? I can't really stop that. I wish I could. Probably close the casino if it was up to me, but it's not. But I can stop this, so I won't be voting for it.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Is there anyone who wishes to speak for the amendment? Any further speakers against the amendment? Yes, Councillor Davidson, Councillor Kavanagh, Councillor Davidson. And I'd like to indicate I'd like to speak against the amendment as well. Yep.
So I'd just like to address a few points that have been raised and put it into context of the planning application and the Urban Planning Committee, which I chair. On the 27th of April, Councillor Kavanagh sought to bring the application to the full council, because every councillor here has the ability to make a responsible decision, and this is what this calls for, a responsible decision. And it's a decision that can affect the community greatly and impact in various detrimental ways. The state body, the Gaming Commission, does not bind us. Tonight we have the discretion to make a decision to avoid such a socially damaging decision. It would be a disgraceful decision for Moreland City Council to approve these extra 10 machines in Glenroy. Gambling machines are the most harmful of gambling and betting. Within the City of Moreland, Glenroy is the second most disadvantaged neighbourhood, including Hume, which is also quite low. The Moreland Strategic Statement and Gaming Policy looks at reducing the harm of gambling in Moreland. It sets out our policy and our stance and the harmful nature of gambling. This statement was sent to the Glenroy RSL directly and no objections were received. Council then put in a request directly to the Minister, which was approved on the 14th of January. This has framed the framework and the position of Council's stance at the moment. There is no transitional provision, and therefore Council must consider the application before it under the current policy. The Gaming Commission, is separate to Council and cannot be revisited. So that decision we can't look back on and revisit that decision. What Council must consider are the local attributes of the surrounding area. So it does not transpire that because of the conditions from the Gaming Commission that Council automatically has to approve the application for gambling machines and planning. This Council still has the decision-making power and the discretion to say no. So under the Gaming Commission, the application can be approved, but there is always a two-step process, whereby the application comes before Council under the Planning and Environment Act. It is not a legitimate expectation that Council should form the same view. This is a socially responsible thing to do, and we still have the discretion to do the right thing. You've heard councillors say that they are not supporting gambling, but they're supporting the introduction of 10 extra machines. That's so hypocritical to me. It's not right. And it's not what I'm going to be supporting tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you, Mayor. As Councillor Davidson mentioned, I was the councillor that moved that it come before the full council from the Urban Planning Committee. And on that evening, I think we probably had the numbers to accept the officer recommendation on that night. But it is important, I think, that a decision like this, that all 11 councillors have their say and have a role in the decision-making process. And it's not an easy one. There's no doubt that Bert is correct. The Glenroy RSL do some magnificent work. There's no doubt about that. And I'm sure everyone is in agreement around the table. Right? There's no doubt that if you were to choose between the lesser of two evils, a hotel or a RSL, you choose the RSL. But that's not the choice tonight. The choice is whether we, if you like, inflict the Glenroy community with 10 more poker machines. That's the choice tonight. And I found it, in one sense I find it a difficult choice, but in another sense I think it's not that difficult. I met with Bert and I met with Ken, and I'm so sorry to hear that he's in hospital and he's unwell, because he's a great guy, as you are. But I met with them and they showed me how the great things that they do for the community, and I accept all that. But then I think, when I finish on council, do I really want, as a legacy, that I say I gave more poker machines to one of the most disadvantaged areas in the community? Do I really want to look back and say that was an achievement of mine? It's not. And for me, although it's difficult because of the people that are involved, when we sit around this table, we sit as a responsible authority. We sit around as the planning authority when we sit around the table making this decision. And also, it's not just a recent thing. When I first got onto council, and it was before my time, I remember Pascoe Vale RSL had sought to have poker machines. And I think it was Mark Higginbotham and his council that refused them at that time. And I congratulate you on that decision, Mark, because at that time you had less policy in place than what we have now, and yet you showed leadership at that time, and I congratulate you on that. This council has for a long time had an anti-poker machine policy. It's not something new. And when we put forward a policy and we bring it to full council and 11 people vote for the policy, then sometimes, I've got news for you, sometimes you have to then make decisions that are based around that policy. It's easy to put your hand up for a policy, but then sometimes you actually have to make decisions that implement that policy. And that's where, if you like, the rubber hits the road. That's where you see whether the people who put their hand up were fair dinkum or not.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. I'd like to speak against the amendment as well. Look, many of the arguments have been covered so well by my fellow councillors, and I thank them for speaking so passionately and eloquently to this very serious sort of issue, and one of the most significant significant decisions I think that we've made during our time on council, and I believe it's one of the first times a decision for extra poker machines has come to council for over 10 years. I just wanted to use this opportunity to respond to a couple of issues that have been raised by fellow councillors. And Councillor Gillies, you raised a prospect of people moving elsewhere if these machines weren't here. But what we've just heard from the applicant is it's not about saturation. Those machines are sort of in some ways not at capacity, but what it is about revenue. And I think that's quite concerning. At the moment, $4 million is spent a year at the Glenroy RSL alone. That's just alone at the Glenroy RSL. $172,000 was spent in Moreland just today on gambling, $63 million a year. So we've got really significant losses, much above the state average. And we've got to ask ourselves what's going on there and what can we do to protect this community. With 10 extra machines, there's another $1 million coming into the RSL. But as we've heard, most of that, maybe that's going in taxes, and I'm really concerned that $53,000 is coming back to the RSL out of $1 million extra. And that tells you what's wrong with this industry, and it is an industry. I think for so long we've been blaming the victim and saying it's the person's fault, but we've got an industry creating machines that are designed to be addictive, and we've got a court case that's about to be launched in courts challenging the validity and the ethics of these types of machine, and a claim that they're designed to be addictive. They exploit vulnerability, and I think that's what we're seeing, in terms of these types of applications. I think we have a responsibility to care for our community, and when we see something that could potentially harm our community for years and years to come, once they're in there, it's very likely they're going to be removed. And our policy, we came up with this policy because we didn't want to see more machines in areas where it's been known that there's greater disadvantage, so it's hurting people more. And this is exactly what this application is doing. And I too would want to support the RSL in your work and find ways for you to be able to, seek that money through grants or, however you can, to continue important community service work, but just not based on pokies revenue that comes at the harm, to the harm of so many, the detriment of so many of our community members. And that's my concern, and that's why I'll be voting against the amendment.
Yeah.
Are there any councillors who haven't spoken to the amendment that wish to speak? Councillor Bolton.
I don't have a lot to add other than to really point out the fact that one of the big problems with poker machines, or electronic gaming machines as they're called these days, is that they employ a huge army of psychologists to try and make them addictive, in the same way that the tobacco companies put chemicals in cigarettes to make them addictive. And I think it's nothing to do with the personal failings of people, and not everyone gets addicted to to electronic gaming machines, just as not everyone gets addicted to other drugs. But I think it's these are machines. This industry is based on employing armies of psychologists to try and make these machines addictive to people, to play on parts of the brain. And so I do agree with Councillor Tapano's comments that the issue, it's not the individual, it is the machine. And it is the machines and the people who create the machines. I also... I think one of the big problems also with electronic gaming machines is not just people going for the night out to go and spend money, but people, popping into the... I know that Glenroy RSL is slightly outside the main shopping strip area, but it's that popping in when people are going to the bank and going shopping, that is often where where most of the revenue for clubs and losses for consumers actually occurs, not so much the going out to the Crown Casino or whatever. I'm against the amendment, and I'll vote against any additional machines.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Bolton. Are there any further speakers who haven't spoken to the amendment? In that case, I'll put that amendment to the vote. All those in favour of the amendment? All those against? I declare that lost and division has been called. Can I ask all those in favour of the amendment to raise their hands again? Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. Got them. And all those against? Thank you, councillors. So the amendment was lost, so we return to the substantive item that is unamended. Are there any further speakers to the substantive motion? Councillor Thompson.
Just quickly, I'd like to show my support for the recommendation that's put towards us from the officers, and just in doing so, echoing the sentiments around the objection to the amendments, but also just to note that the Moreland does have a local planning scheme, and the report does find that there are breaches in that local planning scheme. It specifically specifies clause 22.1, 10 and clause 52.2 gaming and entertainment and licensing venues. So there is a planning scheme rules that this application is breaching if we do introduce the gaming machines. So I just wanted to highlight that and to reiterate that the planning scheme always has amendments. I mean, if we kept it stagnant, then we would have some terrible outcomes in the planning realm. So this is one of the amendments that councillors sought to rectify, and we have, and it's in there and it's enforceable. So I commend the councillors who are voting for this application that's before us now. And certainly look forward to, as the Mayor says, working with RSL to find other ways of improving their ways in which they can afford further service to the community, because, as Councillor was saying before, certainly don't wish to impede that great service that they provide.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Kavanagh, do you wish to close the debate?
No, I think I'll...
Okay. If there's no further speakers to the substantive motion, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried unanimously.
What did you want us to do, Helen?
Sorry, Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Yildiz, we're still in formal meeting. Councillor Yildiz, we're still in formal council meeting. Thank you, councillors, and thank you to all the supporters, objectors and the applicant for being with us here tonight. We now resume the ordinary business of the agenda, and we move to item 4, confirmation of minutes. Could I please have a motion? I'll just give the gallery a moment to. I'll just give the gallery a moment to leave.
Need to do some.
And I'd like to invite any members of the gallery who wish to come forward. There's a few more seats now in the in the front section, you're welcome to come and sit here if you'd like to. Anyone in the second gallery? Okay. Okay, we now move to item 4, confirmation of minutes. Could I please have a motion for the adoption of the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of April, the meetings held on the 13th of April and 26th April 2016? Yep, Councillor Kavanagh. Is there a seconder? Councillor Thompson. Do either of you wish to speak to it or comment to the minutes?
I just had an amendment, sorry.
Certainly, Councillor Hopper.
At last night's meeting of Morlack, it was acknowledged that I did provide an apology to the previous meeting of Morlack, and that's been recorded in those minutes. So I'd like that amended in last month.
Certainly. So we'll note amending the minutes to include an apology from Councillor Hopper at the last Morlack meeting. Any further notes for the minutes? In that case, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. We now move on to section 5, petitions. So I'll ask if we don't have any petitions on the agenda, I believe. One second.
I did receive a petition in regard to that last agenda item.
We don't have any petitions received on the agenda. Okay, I'll ask councillors if they've got petitions they've received. Councillor Gillies, you wish to lodge the petition?
The petition for the
Glenorrah RSL. Thank you very much. I might ask for more petitions and then move them en bloc. Are there any further petitions received from councillors? Could I have a motion to accept the petition? Councillor Gillies, is there a seconder? Councillor Yildiz. All those in favour of accepting the petition? All those against? I declare that carried. Are there further petitions from members of the gallery? No? Okay. Thank you. We'll now move on to section 6, reports from committee to council. We've got RCC 1016, Moreland Reconciliation Advisory Committee. Is there a mover for the minutes of this committee? I'm happy to move from the chair, given I'm a committee chair. Is there a seconder? Councillor Thompson. Do you wish to speak to this item? No? In that case, I'll put it to vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. We've got RCC 1116, Moreland Disability Advisory Committee. Is there a mover for the minutes of these meetings? Again, I'm happy to move from the chair. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bolton. Is there any further debate on this item? Put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. We've got RCC 1216, Friends of LA Community Committee. Is there a mover for the... Yep, Councillor Bolton. Is there a seconder? Councillor Thompson. You wish to speak to it, Councillor Bolton or Thompson? Yep. Any further debate on that? In that case, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. We've got RCC 1316, Moreland Arts Board. Is there a mover for these minutes?
Can I move that this lay on the table?
Okay, we've got a procedural motion to lay this item on the table. All those in favour?
I'm happy to explain if you wish.
I might ask for leave of council to ask Councillor Tapnos to explain why he's seeking for this to be laid on the table.
Thanks, Mayor. Basically, the minutes also include recommendations for council on the purchase of arts acquisitions. I disagree with one of the recommendations to council. By accepting the minutes, we effectively accept those recommendations. So I'd like for council to review those potentially later in the agenda.
Okay, so we've got the motion to lay the item on the table. All those in favour of laying the item on the table? All those against? I declare that carried. So that is laid on the table. All right, now we move to question time. And thank you, members of the gallery, for your patience in staying for a later start to question time. This is an opportunity of approximately 30 minutes for citizens of Moreland to raise questions with councillors. Please note that if your question relates to a matter of any of the officer reports, this is the time to raise the question with councillors. A maximum of 2 questions is allowed per person, and a maximum of 3 questions will be heard on any subject. Council will then proceed to the next subject, but return to the previous subject if time allows. If your question cannot be answered, it will be taken on notice and responded to between now and the next council meeting. If a response to your question is provided at tonight's meeting, there will be no further formal response. However, council will action any commitments made in answering the question. We have about 30 minutes and we want to make sure that we hear all the questions, so I ask that we don't enter into debate during this time, and if we need to, we can have a more detailed discussion outside of this forum. Also, councillors, I'll be accepting, we'll try to accept one answer to each question unless there's further debate required, and we should address each question succinctly. So we're commencing question time at 8:10. And we'll just move to the first question. So that we've had a question from Mr. Higginbotham, but you've asked that question. You're satisfied with the question that has been asked? Thank you. Okay. Certainly. So we've got a couple of questions on the budget. So we've first got a question from Mr. Sebastian Furness in regards to a budget question. Please come forward.
My name's Sebastian Furness of 4 Delta Avenue, Coburg North. Thank the councillors for giving me the opportunity to ask a question. My question relates to Merlinston Hall, and in the proposed council budget for 2016-17, the council states in its executive summary that it should prioritise projects and programs that address community need, and they reduce the risk and or cost of the council and contribute to renewal of existing assets. The Merlinston Hall has been identified by the council as a community asset, and indeed the council has a heritage overlay on the hall, and I asked the council why there's currently no budgeting in the budget for 2016-17 for any restoration of the hall.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Furness. We've got a couple of questions regarding this, so I might take a few of those questions and answer that en bloc, if that's okay. We've got Mr. David Senior, I believe, regarding Merlinston Hall as well.
Firstly, I just want to thank those councillors at the budget meeting who voted for the Merlinston Hall restoration and showed their commitment to community culture, environment and sustainability. It's a shame that some of the other councillors, including those whose party supposedly most espouses those values, chose not to do so. My question. In the detailed capital works program of the budget, there's no mention of repair of Merlinston Progress Hall, a heritage building, as recommended in a recent feasibility study. Given that the Moreland Planning Department are currently looking for financial partners for the hall, would it not be fiscally responsible to allocate ongoing funds to a project the council has committed to and recognises as a valuable community asset?
Thank you, Mrs. Senior. We've also got Emma Cornish-Giles, who will ask a question on Merlinston Hall.
Good evening. I'm frustrated to be standing here again speaking to you. Tonight my husband should actually be contributing to the cultural life of the City of Moreland at the Phoenix Band, but he's again minding our children so I can be here. Why? Because clearly my family needs to remind you, or at least some of you, about what we have been going over for the past 8 years. 8 years is a long time in a young family's life. As you know, I wanted a local playgroup. My children are now in school. In fact, I'm researching high schools. We have missed that important connection. But we still need a community space. The young families moving in need to be connected to community. We need to save a heritage building. In Merlinston, we see more and more developments. Homes for at-risk youth, homes for those who need social housing. Yet, as a council, you have failed to provide my community with a place to connect and engage. This is poor urban planning. At the 9th of December Council meeting 2015, Merlinston Progress Hall was identified as a valued council asset and a heritage building by this council. Your heritage listed building, your heritage listed asset is in disrepair. It's a sad indictment of failure by Moreland City Council to meet its obligations under the Victorian Heritage Act 2009 and its own environmental and civic asset local laws with regards to restoring Merlinston Hall. Maintenance of heritage assets are to be maintained in a manner which retains heritage significance with the objective of preventing deterioration and avoiding the need for expensive catch-up maintenance and major repairs. That's Policy Note 2009 from the Victorian Government Cultural Heritage Asset Management Principles. All of a sudden, this issue has become political. a ward debate. Over the last week, I have heard he says this and she says that. Well, guess what? You, this council, actually said this is a valuable asset. I do not understand why on earth I have to be here again tonight. I do not understand why my time is being wasted. You need to put your heritage listed hall in the budget planning for the next 4 years.
Sorry to interrupt, just a reminder of time, if you can please.
I'm wrapping up. When my parents told me about financial responsibility, they taught me to take care of what I have first, my responsibilities. And when these were taken care of, I could do what I wanted. You have a deteriorating asset with heritage obligations. So it appears that by not prioritising this in the budget, you are choosing to neglect your financial responsibilities. This is why I have to ask, why does the Moreland Council think it is not financially responsible to restore the Mellinston Progress Hall and put it in the budget?
Thank you, Ms Cornish-Giles. So they're the questions on the Mellinston Hall. Is there a councillor that wishes to respond? And I'll take a few responses. Councillor Lincoln-Thompson, Councillor Bolton, Councillor Gillies, Councillor Lincoln-Thompson. Yes, everyone wants to speak to this.
Yes.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Save Mellinston Progress Hall, Mellinston Sustainability Group coming to council again, and I am sorry that you have had to come to council again because you feel as though you need to keep pushing this particular issue, and I know that it did come out of a budget last-minute decision that was put up by one of the councillors which I thought was unfair and irresponsible at that particular time. But just to talk about where we are with the Mellinston Progress Hall, in December, you're right, we all agree that this is a valued asset and that we would go into an expression of interest to reactivate that space. We wanted to look for a partner that would help us activate and restore the hall and work with the Mellinston community to bring it back to community participation and community use. And that still remains. That is still part of Council's commitment, fully committed there. It hasn't been rescinded in any form or any fashion. And I have forwarded some of an update to some of the members of the Mellinston community about where this is at. And just for the benefit of the rest of the gallery and the councillors, that where we are at the moment is looking at an EOI process. So we've got Mellinston Hall. At the moment, it's housing our Christmas decorations in disrepair. We're looking to do an EOI to find a funding partner. And then the stage 2 is to develop a model with this funding partner in conjunction with the community and also to report on the outcomes. And the key milestones for this particular EOI process is that later this month, in May 27, a draft EOI documentation will be prepared. We will advertise the EOI in the start of June. The deadline to receive these EOI proposals is early July, and we'll have an assessment panel in mid-July. The stakeholder engagement with the EOI partner in the community will be over the month of August, and the report to come to our executive in early September, briefing to the councillors in mid-September, and a council report in October for us to be signed off about the outcomes of this particular process. And just in terms of finding a funding partner, we've had, as Councillor Kavanagh has pointed out before, there are many council facilities like the sporting clubs that use our facilities in order to activate them and return them to community benefit. And we've also had a council building that has been activated by another partner and has a successful business growing out of it. So these are examples that we've seen in the community so far, and this is the vision that we have for the Mellinston Town Hall. And I believe it was inappropriate for a last-minute bid to be put on the table on budget night, 30 minutes after the meeting had started. So I stay committed to the current motion put by Council in December and look forward to our report coming in October.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. We've got Councillor Bolton next.
Yes, I believe that, I think the council actually passed the wrong motion last year. Like it was a little bit of a step forward, but I think it wasn't a surefire way of guaranteeing the success of the hall, because we could get to October and there'll be no expressions of interest or not appropriate ones, or we could get an expression of interest for jointly funding restoration, which will mean the organisation that wins that bid might have to jack up prices for the use of the hall to a point where the community can't afford it. But also it delays it till October. There'll be a new council elected, and then the community might have to start the whole process again. And I think the only way of short-circuiting that, my personal belief, is to actually guarantee the money in the budget. Actually, I think that's the only way, because otherwise I can see that this was, obviously was not the intention of councillors at the time to just try and delay the process, but I think it was a bit of a compromise resolution, and really it does just put off the decision about what to do with the hall till October. And I think really the community, I'm convinced of the argument that the community has been strung along enough, and now is the time to take some decisive action. I think in a budget meeting, people have a right to, it's an open council meeting, have a right to put forward whatever amendments, resolutions, etc. they believe are fit. But and I guess with the process that Councillor Thompson has outlined, we don't know if we're at a point, quite a few months after that resolution was passed, and we don't know if there's anyone prepared to put in an expression of interest. We already know with another council project, Saxon Street, we didn't find expressions of interest because, various reasons, I won't go into them now, but organisations felt that it wasn't a goer. Now it's a different type of project to this, so maybe this might attract expressions of interest, but we just don't know, and I think it's too uncertain. So anyway, we're not voting on this tonight, but I think it is worthwhile that members of the community have come along to express points of view.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Gillies, wish to speak to it?
Yes, look, firstly, I think that it's quite, I don't mind people bringing up motions even on a night of a budget meeting, and I don't, because sometimes through the process we do overlook things and decisions that we've made throughout the year, because we do make a lot of decisions, and that's the reality. And in actual fact, I had completely forgotten about Merlinston Hall, but as soon as it was brought up at that meeting, I did think about it. And my issue is this, okay? And not all of the things that happen this year or last year or in this term are solely our responsibility, although we do take responsibility for them when we're elected in. While we allow assets of council to fall into disrepair, it will cost us more money to repair them, and that's the reality. And hence why we have things like the old police building that then gets leased out to a partner who's going to, do it up on our behalf because we can't. If you don't have a really good strategy around how you're going to maintain your assets, you get to the point like we are with the Oak Park Aquatic Centre, where, we're in a situation where we urgently have to do that now, because for 6 years it was brought up because it was something that needed to be done and hadn't been done up since the 1960s. And then all of a sudden, the talk happened, but then it became, and we'll have netball courts and we'll have this and we'll have that. And it became a multi-million-dollar venture. Sometimes when you're in a position where, budgets aren't going to look as good as they could be, or things are tight and you have competing interests, it's not about playing off one project against another. It's not about any of that stuff. It's about trying to work out how you can do as much as you possibly can with the funds that you have. Now, we do need to do Oak Park Aquatic Centre, and I'm all for it. I grew up going to that aquatic centre, but, your community needs Merlinston Hall too. And just as legitimately and just as urgently, because the longer Merlinston Hall is left in a state of disrepair, the more money it is going to cost council, okay? So, you probably read in the Moreland Leader, a letter to the editor, and I did support Merlinston Hall, and I'm not going to apologise for that, because the reality is we have, now I will tell you exactly what we have because I've written it down. We have 7.64 million currently set aside for that project. Now, when I got to council, when I was elected in 2012, there had been much talk about Oak Park Aquatic Centre, but it actually no funds had been allocated to it. So over this term, this is what we have managed to bring together for the project. In this proposed budget, there is $645,000 allocated to it. And then we have applied for a $10 million government funding and grant. We don't know whether we've received that. We don't know how much we'll receive of that. We've also applied for a $3 million grant, or we will, apply for a $3 million grant later this year. And we
just a reminder of time.
We don't know whether we'll receive that or how much of that we'll receive either. So, the $13 million that we have to borrow may be more than that. In the scheme of things, when you're talking about borrowing that kind of money, is a more amount, going to hurt us or cripple us so that we can do Merliston Hall? Or if we do find that it's only, $500,000 to do Merliston Hall and we can, try and find that we make up the difference, we should be trying to do that in whatever way we possibly can, and we should be actually looking at every project to try and get as many things done as possible. Because at the end of the day, Oak Park people don't want the newest, beautiest, fancy super duper thing. They just want to swim in a pool that doesn't leak.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. I've got a number of people who want to speak, and allow their speeches because people to speak to it given the significance of it in terms of budget. I've got Councillor Tapanos, Yildiz and Kavanagh. So Councillor Tapanos first.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the question was, but I feel the disappointment. I again and again and again, I think with so many familiar faces. And I think council really does need to give honest answers here, because we're going through an FOI process, but I thought we really had done all the work beforehand. I thought the community did it years ago. I really did. And had come up with really what they wanted to see. And there were genuine usages there that we should have supported. This FOI process, if it is successful and we do find a project, a partner that we want to work with, we don't have any money in the budget. So that's really irresponsible. The community's come here before and we've said, we support you, this is a budget issue. I was the councillor who raised it at the budget, and I'm told I was irresponsible and unfair. I think what is irresponsible and unfair is that the community members have to keep coming here to be asking about this hall and not really getting an honest answer. I think what is irresponsible and unfair is the fact that we've put a heritage overlay on this building, we've committed to maintaining the building, and yet we are not doing that. We are letting it fall into disrepair and become derelict. I think that is really what is unfair and irresponsible. I wanted to mention about the FOI process a little bit more.
EOI.
Sorry? EOI, sorry. It's been a big night already. Relation to expressions of interest process. There's been a couple of examples, and Councillor Bolton mentioned the one down at Saxon Street, Brunswick. After a year and a half, it fell apart, and we're starting from scratch. Probably take years in order to find the usage there. Another one that was quite successful was here on Bell Street, the Cop Shop restaurant, which is a fantastic restaurant, may I add. I'll give it a bit of a plug. I go there regularly. It's a success story because it's a private restaurant. Now, we don't really want a private restaurant. We want a community hall. I don't know of a business that is going to invest $1 million into a community hall. So we know what the outcome is really going to be. We're going to need to put, if not the entire sum, a large amount of money. So why don't we actually budget for it? There are numerous reasons why I mentioned them in the budget meeting, but I just wanted to also talk about this concept of unfair, or has it been raised before? We all know it has. The budget meeting is there to discuss budget bids. That's when you move them. You can't get a group of councillors in a question and information session to officers determining the budget and then complaining about the fact that things that have been talked about, have been raised in the agenda, are raised at the meeting. So there's nothing wrong with the process. The budget meeting, the budget hasn't been adopted, by the way, and Coach community members have put in submission, and I will be moving to actually put the money back in the budget, and I hope councillors will actually support me this time so we can get this all done. But that is the process. We put the budget out, it's draft budget, We hear submissions, we approve it. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's get this all done. I look forward to the debate when the final adoption of the budget is due
Thank
to
you,
come.
Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Yildiz.
Thank you, Abby. Quick. Can I just say, look, I'm extremely embarrassed to be standing here looking at you. I remember the first time you came into my office when I was mayor. I've been mayor of this council twice, and on both occasions we've sat in my office making the promise that we will do something. I'm embarrassed because I feel a little bit irresponsible because I didn't realise, honestly, that, and I'm saying this, some councils won't believe it, don't care. I honestly thought that there was money allocated in this budget. Should have noticed. When Councillor Tapanos said that he was moving the motion, I went, are you serious? There's no money in there. How do we not see that? The hall's been derelict since 1993. That's it's 23 years. That hall is 310 square metres. It's been sitting there since. Whether the money comes out of whichever project, it's not about that. It's not about where the money comes from. I think the issue is we need to find something. You're not asking for $1 million. Councillor Tapanos said $1 million, you could have said 300,000. I think you would have been happy with 50,000. You're just wanting some commitment from us that something's going to be done. Because for 8 years, I've been standing here feeling quite embarrassed. If I promise you $1,000 today, I need to honour my promise. And that's what I do. And I feel extremely embarrassed, the fact that we've made promises and we haven't kept them. The councils that voted for, I think, voted with integrity and honour. I don't think we voted disgracefully. I don't think we voted in a way that made us feel less important or less respectful. I don't think the Save Milliston group is really wanting, you guys just want space. You don't want to hear EOI, EDI, SOI or WHAMI, or which stands for we'll have another meeting. They want a venue that will open its doors to our elderly, to our young kids. You're standing there saying to me that you're enrolling your kids into secondary school and you still don't have a venue. That's for us, that's embarrassing.
Yep.
I'm not against any pool. Let me just make that clear, because councillors think that I've suddenly decided to... Because you know what? The people that will find that money are those people behind, not us. We don't have that ability, and they are responsible people. I was there when we launched the Brunswick pool. $18 million is what we invested in that pool. $26 million is what we're investing into Oak Park. I love pools. I swim, so I don't have an issue. My family do. My wife's do. We all swim. We love pools. But the issue is the fact that there's no commitment. David, Emma, you're not asking for $1 million. You just want the place open so you can use it. We've stored Christmas decorations for nearly 23 years in a venue that's sitting there. It's your asset. It's not ours, it's yours. You voted for us to do the right thing. Whether it sits in the North-East Ward, North-West Ward, I couldn't care if it sits in the South Ward. We need to open that venue for everybody to use. And whilst some
Councillor
people think
Yildiz,
it's
just a reminder about time.
Okay, whilst some people think it's a political game, I'm not interested. I'm a straight shooter. I'll say it how it is. I'm not interested in he was trying to do this, she was trying to do that. Let's get on with it. We're elected, responsible adults. Let's behave like it.
Thank you, Councillor Yildiz. And Councillor Kavanagh as the final speaker before we move on to the next questions.
First of all, the point on the budget night was that not so much the commitment to Milliston Hall. By the way, I agree entirely with what Councillor Lenka Thompson outlined earlier. For me, that's the right way to go. But the point on the budget night was the lady mentioned about how her parents had taught her about financial management. One thing my parents taught me was not to take money from one thing to fund something else. That's what I was taught. That the only reason why we have that money in the Oak Park Reserve is because some councillors around the table have made hard decisions about asset sales. And we've got a chief executive officer that has set up a fund for Oak Park. We've borrowed money for the Brunswick Baths, we've borrowed money for CB Smith Reserve, both important projects. But at one stage, Oak Park was ahead of CB Smith Reserve in its redevelopment, but CB Smith Reserve got the drawings up, etc., and I was supportive of it going ahead. But here we are now, at a time when Oak Park is now in need. We have some money that has been hard fought, not easy, selling the Urella site against public opposition that raised money, selling that site to put money into the fund, a site that many of the councillors around here voted against selling. If they had their way, we wouldn't have had any money in that reserve. So we've built up that reserve. The Auditor General has told us that our borrowing limit is around $13 million more. Any more than that, and we get into what is called moderate risk, a band where the Auditor General does not want councils to go. That means for a $26 million project, at the time, almost at the very beginning of the project, we need $13 million in that fund. And I'm going to stand by and make sure with every vote I have that we have $13 million in that fund. That's not against Merliston Hall. In any way is that against Merliston Hall. And I appreciate the Merliston group who have emailed me over the last couple of days, and we've had a good email exchange to try and clarify my position on that. So I appreciate that. Now, Councillor Bolton said that the only way is to put the money in the budget. Councillor Bolton voted against the budget last year, voted against the proposing of the budget 2 weeks ago. If Councillor Bolton had a way, we would not have 1 cent in the budget. The budget would be bankrupt. The budget would be bankrupt. Not 1 cent. Not a $147 million budget. Nothing. If the majority of councillors voted against the budget, it'd be like in 1975 with the blocking of supply. It's the same thing at a council level. That's exactly what would happen. So that's why in 11 years, I've been many things in the budget I haven't been happy with, but I voted for every single budget, and I believe any responsible councillor should.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. We might move on to the next series of questions. Councillor
I'd
Gillies,
just like to ask Councillor Kavanagh something about...
Councillor Gillies, Councillor Gillies, we are going to move on to the rest of the questions. They'll be for... Yes,
I've got a question for Councillor Kavanagh too.
I think we need to move on. This is question time. We've heard responses. Thank you for indulging. Councillors, we are moving on to the next question. We have indulged a number of answers because I think it's such a significant issue and we want to communicate clearly about what our plans are regarding the Merliston Hall and our commitment to do so as we did through the December resolution, and that's why we've heard from a number of councillors. We're now moving on to the next questioner, Dennis Jenkins, regarding a budget query. Is Mr Jenkins here? I should have left. Okay, we've got Mr Robert Stansell regarding Coburg Primary School. He's just coming up to the lectern.
Good evening, councillors. My name is Rob Stansell and I'm here on behalf of Coburg Primary School, who have written a letter to you regarding safety concerns for the children and families attending the Coburg Primary School. I emailed all of you so that you could have a thumbs up on it. Basically there's 3 concerns. I won't read it all to cut time, as you have the detail there. The 3 basic issues are related to pedestrian bike safety, for which they're asking the question of council, as many of our families from Pentridge Village are now crossing Urquhart Street to come to school. What are the council's plans to ensure the safety of children and families who ride bikes and walk to the northern campus of the school? Another question related to that is, what will council do to ensure the safety of children and parents entering and leaving the school via Russell Street? And what will the council put in place to ensure cars cannot reverse back into the fence of the junior campus? So that's related to the Russell Street concerns. There's another question regarding parking, which is going to be a significant issue, where currently there's no signage for school parking spots in Urquhart Street, Elm Street, Russell Street, or the Leisure Centre car park. And for parents, there's a drop-off zone. So these are also, there are also no disabled parking for parents. I probably should have pointed out that in that letter, the projections for the school in 3 years' time is an increase from 270 population to 580. So we're looking at wanting to address some serious issues now that are going to get worse. So in relation to that, question 4 is, with enrolments predicted to double by 2020 and more residents and traffic in the surrounds, will the council provide appropriate signage for parents and children attending the school by car? And the final issue is related to high-rise apartments, which is particularly concerning future estate building, an 8-storey building right overlooking the school on the other side of the Pentridge Wall. So They have deep concerns about the privacy of children with apartment balconies looking over the playground. So the question I have to council regarding this is, have the planning permits been approved by council, and if so, when did this take place? Sixthly, how will council ensure that the safety and privacy of children will be protected during the building process and the increased tradesperson traffic? And seventhly, what measure have been taken in working with Future Estate to ensure balconies do not infringe on student safety and privacy? As an add to that, I have today confirmed with council that Coburg Primary School will be able to become part of the objectors and meet with Future Estate to help thrash out some of those issues or put their objections to it. And I suppose really the response from council may be better done to the Coburg Primary School in some kind of written response. So I'll leave it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stansel. There's a number of questions that you've asked us, which we'll follow up on. I believe the crossing signage planning permits. We can take some of those notice. Is there a councillor who wishes to respond to ask a question of clarification? Yep. Would the director like to comment? Okay, so we might take. Councillor Bolton, you wish to ask a question?
This is more to the directors. I'm wondering if there has been any discussion so far about the parking, traffic, pedestrian safety issues, like if that has been on the council's radar, or this is a new issue because the school's likely to double.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Bolton. I might get the director of...
Through the Mayor, one of our transport engineers met with the principal on the 23rd of March and talked through the issues that are subject to the letter. There are a number of actions underway, including some pedestrian fencing in Russell Street. The signage and parking that exists around the school area, there is a lot of parking, as you'd be aware, the Russell Street car park, around the Civic Centre, etc. Directional signage, etc., will address as part of the formal response back to the principal. And I suppose on the safety issue, part of the Coburg structure plan includes improvements through the Urquhart Street area, but currently there's no funded project as part of that structure plan.
Thank you very much. We'll take those questions on notice and provide you a further response.
Other question that I think some other people in the gallery would be interested in is the one on the last page about have the permits been approved by council for the 8-storey. My understanding is they haven't. But
yes, so the planning permit. Yes, Director of Planning and Economic Development.
Through the Mayor, I can clarify that in 2011, the Minister for Planning, as responsible authority, issued a permit for a 7-storey building on the site. Earlier this year, we received a new application, though, for an 8-storey building. That application was 390 properties were notified of that applications and signs on site. And the school and the current tenant, as well as apartment, were also notified of the application. The school has been notified it will go to the Urban Planning Committee for a decision, and they have been adjoined as a party, as an objector already as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Director, and we will provide a more substantive response on notice. Councillors, can I have a motion to extend question time to hear the final 6 questions we have? Councillor Bolton, seconded by Councillor Gillies. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. We've got Mr. Imtiaz Ahmed regarding employment pathways. Mr. Ahmed is not here. Okay, we might go to Mr. Nick Dolby regarding backpackers and housing.
Recently, in the last month, there was a group of backpackers who were seeking somewhere to sleep while working in Australia on working visas. Some people objected to them sleeping in cars in a public car park, using public showers to have showers and so on. I look at it as a tip of the iceberg. In the 2011 census, the ABS identified 800 people experiencing homelessness in Moreland. Using a low estimate of increase since that date, that means tonight there are 1,000 people experiencing homelessness in Moreland. These backpackers aren't taking advantage of the public purse, etc., etc. They are a tip of the iceberg of the housing problem that Moreland and other parts of Australia are facing. And I'd like to ask Council, will it rapidly implement the Moreland City Council affordable housing strategy? Will it write to the state and federal governments demanding more action upon housing and homelessness?
Thank you, Mr Dolby. Is there a councillor who wishes to respond? Councillor Yildiz?
Yeah, look, I've been in touch with Nick and I had a chat to our CEO about this and Grant's well aware. I think it's probably more appropriate that our Director, Grant Thorne, respond about what's been happening and what the progress is. And I appreciate your concern.
Yep, thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Bolton wishes to. Councillor, I might go to the Director first, if that's okay. Or Councillor Bolton, do you wish to go first? Director of Infrastructure, just to give us an pardon?
I think the question was about affordable housing.
Yes, I think it's not generally an update about what's been happening in that area, but I think it's pertinent to give us an update on what's happening on the site to give some context.
Through the Mayor, as pointed out, I'll only update on the camping that was occurring or is occurring at Coburg Lake. There are two parties, if you like, who are or have been camping in the car park at the lake, and a couple of those do include a couple of homeless gentlemen. But there are also international tourists who have been using the car park as a camping ground. Under our local law, it's illegal to camp on our land, and we've been actioning that through the local law.
Thank you.
Just ask the Director something.
Yes, I've got Councillor Bolton first, and then might ask for a clarification. Oh, actually, Councillor Gillies, you want to ask for a clarification? Certainly.
In the immediate term, are we doing anything to help these people? Are we able to do anything to help these people? I mean, it may be illegal, but they still, if they're in that situation, surely council will be doing something to help them immediately.
Extra bins.
Director, would you like to take this one?
Through the Mayor, we have provided information to both sets of parties that have been at the car park on the other avenues and the agencies that can assist them.
Okay, Councillor Bolton.
Yes, thanks for the question, Nick. I think I've actually got a motion in general business around the issue of homelessness in Melbourne because of just my anecdotal observation is it's really gone up, and also across Melbourne. And there seem to be a whole lot of people who once would have been in permanent housing, say 5 or 10 years ago, are homeless now. And then there's a whole layer of people who don't consider themselves homeless that are staying on people's couches and spare rooms and so forth, and sheds, uninsulated car sheds, to have a place to sleep. But I mean, there is also growing visible homelessness. I think I especially noticed around Coburg, and I know when I first got elected there was a family living in the Faulkner Cemetery. But I think there's a question of various services, and then there's a question of the need for public housing. And there have been a number of letters to the state government from the council around public housing, which I've moved, but then actually needs to be a lot more action than actual letters from the council. Like I think really will really only be when the community gets organised around this issue, because basically we're in a situation where the state government plans to transfer around 12,000 public housing units to not-for-profit housing associations, and those housing associations don't house very few vulnerable people on low incomes like New Start, because they're in a capital accumulation model. So, the previous state government wasn't building anything, and the current state government has a policy of continuing this privatisation policy by stealth. So, really, we need a mass movement, really, and the council needs to be behind it.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Hopper.
Thank you. Look, I just wanted to say that I do think it is really important that we separate and distinguish the two issues that are taking place here. And I certainly acknowledge that there is a growing homelessness issue in our city as well as across Melbourne, and we need to be doing all that we can to assist those people who are experiencing homelessness or through disadvantage come to use our public facilities. I know, for example, that a number of years ago we discovered an illegal international student boarding house in Moreland because one of our public public showers was being used by international students who were living 20 or 30 in one house and had access to one bathroom. So it is important that we are providing services and facilities to those people, but I think that that is completely separate and distinct from tourists who don't want to pay for accommodation and a shower and are choosing
They
to...
are working visa.
Mr. Dolby, please. Mr. Dolby, please don't interrupt.
I do think that if they are in an economic position and they are making a choice to use our public car parks and our public showers just because they've read on a website that it is somewhere where they can do so, and I understand that there is a website where people rank public car parks and public showers as good places for tourists in caravans to use, I think that's a very separate issue and it's not something that I support.
Thank you, Councillor Hopper. Thank you for the question. We might move on to our next question. Mr. Simon Kanana.
Sorry. I asked a question. I just want to say something very quickly.
Okay, yep, if you'd like to say quickly on the...
I just want to clarify that people that are on working visas come out here with an expectation and often are then put in positions where they don't get paid properly or even enough and, are being sent to jobs and getting... sometimes getting paid $5 a day for their work. So I think that was harsh.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gillies. We're moving on to Mr. Simon Kanana. It's a question regarding Cumberland Road and O'Hay Street, I believe. Apologies if I pronounced your name incorrectly.
It's Caruana.
Sorry.
Caruana, that's right. I live at 356 O'Hay Street.
Yeah.
Now, there's been a lot of urban development at the corner of Cumberland Road and O'Hay Street. As a result of that, there's been a lot of traffic congestion along O'Hay Street. Basically, my question is anything being done to facilitate the extra vehicles that are coming through at the moment, plus once the developments are complete, is there going to be any development with regards to parking arrangements? We have very wide nature strips. To me, they're unnecessary. The street is very narrow where there is parking on both sides of the street. I often find it difficult to even reverse out of my driveway where cars are parked directly across my driveway and on both sides. So it makes it very difficult for the residents trying to manoeuvre their vehicles through O'Hay Street. Also, just travelling up and down the road, it's a real navigation course. As I mentioned, the street's narrow, cars parking on both sides. You see oncoming traffic, they don't give way. So you sort of got to duck into parked cars. As I said, my idea would be to cut back on the excessively wide nature strips, maybe 45-degree angle parking. So get them off the actual street themselves, the street itself. The street there's no dividing lane. So it's a bad problem. It's only going to get worse once the townhouses, the 150 townhouses are complete. So that's. Just want to see if anything's
Thank you very
been
much
done.
for your question. Is there a councillor that wishes to answer that question? Councillor Bolton and Councillor Thompson. Just a question of clarification before you leave, sir. Yes, Councillor Thompson.
Just in terms of where you are on O'Hay Street, is it in east of Cumberland Road or are you west?
West. So from Cumberland Road towards the train tracks.
Yep.
That
Okay.
section.
So
I know
it's-
there's a lot of attention being shown
Yeah,
to the other
the
side.
other end.
But
Yep.
nothing's
No,
been
it's
said for our side.
West inside. Thank you. So I've got Councillor Bolton first and then Councillor Yildiz.
Yes, there is a report on that. You might have seen it, and it might be not everything to your liking, which will be discussed and voted on later tonight, and hopefully we can bring that item forward because there's a number of people here for that report. I think when I was, partly because I'm a North East Ward councillor, I was sort of more aware of the problems on the eastern side, and when the council organised a meeting of residents, I'm not sure if you were there, it sort of became very apparent the issues on the western side of Sussex Street, going further down, and someone actually did approach me about exactly the issue you're talking about the size of the nature strips on that end. I think this report really tonight is really just the beginning of a process, because I think really we hadn't council hadn't really addressed these issues for a long time, and so now I think we've got to make sure this working committee and the reporting back to the community on proposals that come out of it deal with issues right along the whole length of O'Hay Street, the section in North West Ward as well as the section in North East Ward. I mean, it's a very lively meeting with a lot of ideas being put forward and a lot of people were saying exactly what you're saying. Plus, the other thing is people were talking about how they had to wait 15, 20 minutes at peak hour to be able to cross the road to take the kids to school.
Thank you. Councillor
Can I just say, look, I know exactly what you're saying because I live in Eastgate Street, and when I'm trying to get onto Cumberland Road, there's a lot of traffic congestion. But what's happened is the development on that corner of Cumberland and Eastgate Street, what they were doing is all the contractors were parking down in our street, almost right up to my home. And that's now finished. So that development on that side, now they've gone to the one closer to our Hayes and Cumberland Road. So that traffic congestion's there because all the tradies are parking there. But what I do know, and I have been asking, because someone did complain, in fact, a number of residents complained about that, and so I made some inquiries. What I do know, and I'm happy for the Director of Planning and Economic Development to correct me, that site's actually got a lot of parking. It's got ample parking. In terms of what they've done underneath, I don't know if you've walked past and had a look, but with Dorothy Impey Home there, and now that development, no doubt it's going to increase traffic. But you'll find that when it's complete, I think we probably exaggerate sometimes and think, oh my God, what's going to happen? It was pretty busy before that. No one's moved in, but I'm saying it's going to get busy, no doubt. But they are responding because I did convey. In fact, one of the complainants is someone who works for an MP, and he wasn't happy. So I do know that the officers went down. They didn't book the guys because there's no parking restrictions along there. The issue you've got is this: if we said to the officers, no, we're not happy with it, they're parking there, let's get traffic parking signs in there, the restrictions, the problem then you have is once they go, then your average person who's visiting the mother or father at the elderly Dorothy Impey Home has only got an hour's parking. And then you've got the entire street that are going to receive parking surveys. So if you can hang in there, I think the way that they've built it, I think the way they've handled themselves has been pretty good, but they haven't been causing a lot of disruption. But no doubt, I hear what you're saying. Are you near Dorothy Impey, or are you further down?
Further down, but
and it's still affecting you, the traffic that goes along there.
on my way home, you have to navigate through the parked cars and oncoming traffic. Like I said, you have to duck into where the parked cars
Look, mate,
so people can.
I know people here.
Can go barge through.
Look, I know people. I'm not going to mention anyone, but I know people here that actually drive past my house nearly every morning and every afternoon to get home and back. Eastgate and Westgate. I drop my kids off to Mercy and I drive down Westgate to get back onto Cumberland Road to get to Bell Street. So it's a dog's leg. Everyone's doing the same thing. And they were doing it before that development was there anyway. So I'm hearing you, and I think, how do you restrict that? We've got officers, and I'm happy for Kirsten and Grant to maybe offer a response to this.
We might move forward if we might talk to you after this meeting, if that's okay, and just catch you up with where the discussions are with the meeting that we had previously as well, if that was okay with you, because it's quite a lengthy discussion. So thank you very much for your question, and we'll respond to you a bit more. Thank you very much. We've got two more questions, again from Mr. Robert Stansel regarding, I think it's the Pentridge development. Do you wish to come back? No, he's gone. Okay, no problem. So the final question is from Annalie Okins regarding green space.
Have you got Maureen Murphy there?
No, I don't have a question from Maureen Murphy.
She put in a form earlier.
Okay, we'll just check
at the very beginning, before the meeting started, about the anti-racism rally.
We'll just check that. We'll just hear from the question and we'll check that while that's happening. Yes, Ms. Hawkins.
Okay, my name is Annalie Hawkins. I live at 19 Julia Street, Coburg North, where I've been resident for 16 years. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'd like to bring up a more general question about open space. As more and more residents are coming into the northern part of the council area, particularly Coburg, houses are being subdivided at the back. We're talking about developing a large area of Pentridge into flats and apartments. Where is the additional space for these extra residents going to be provided so that you're not going to overwhelm the green space that's there already. I mean, if I go past the lake on many of a Saturday, I can already see it's very crowded with people. So I'm asking, is there a strategy? Will there be a strategy at looking at providing extra space for those extra residents, particularly if we're going to get more of a build-up? Because it is to do with residents' health and amenity. It's for their children, for old people. If you don't have a garden, you're looking to go somewhere for recreational purposes. So that's just a general question, but I think it's something that's often not brought up here, whereas in Europe, and my family comes from Germany, it's a very strong point that if you live in medium density, you have access to green space. So I just put it forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. Is there a councillor who wishes to respond? There's probably a lot to say to that. It's a fantastic question and something that's front and centre of this council's mind. We have an open space strategy and a fund, an open space reserve that we are trying to use strategically in terms of acquiring new open space. And the main strategic sort of levers that we have are ensuring that we retain our open space and also acquire new open space, but very conscious that we've got to get the balance right with the increased density. But I think you've got it around this table. Council has been talking about this a lot, and considering very seriously when we've got new applications what the broader amenity impact is in that area. So we're happy to talk to you further following the meeting if you'd like to find out a little bit more about some of that work that's already begun.
Because it's
yes.
not coming across and being involved in the Pentridge thing, I'm concerned when you get, developments built out and there doesn't seem to be any green space being provided by the developers.
Can I say
All right,
something?
I've just got Councillor Tapanos and Bolton. Because now started the discussion. We'll move on after this last question.
It's a major problem, obviously, because as we do get more densities and more development, we need open space, particularly if we're going to continue to be a livable city, and it goes towards all of our strategies, even health and wellbeing. The way the system is designed to work is that when a developer subdivides the property for two or more, I believe, they will pay a contribution to council. The council is expected with that money to actually create new open space. However, council can also create new assets in existing open space, such as playground equipment, furniture, etc., etc. So it has been my view that for far too long, we have been spending a large chunk of that money in creating a new playground equipment or new parks or a new irrigation system. What we should actually be doing is saving that money and actually making a strategic purchase for open space. We've made some of those strategic purchases when they become available, and the old school in Glenroy, in Redcliffe Road, and that was paid for, including sections of the golf course, and we've had some new parks, Reserve, more recently. So some effort has been going into creating new parks, but we need to